Euzubillahi mineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul ukdeden min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Inshallah we will continue with our discussions on the 25th word. This is a chapter of our book which is about the miraculousness of Quran, and it's been a while since we started discussing this, and today inshallah we will start with the second light of 25th word, and this is where we are. This is the 25th word. Before, we've been studying the first light, which was a long text. So I guess last week we studied the 25th word, first light, third ray, and third radiance. And today, inshallah, we are starting with the second light and first beam. Let me start reading right away, since we already starting late. The second light comprises three beams. First beam, according to the testimony of thousands of brilliant scholars of rhetoric and the science of rhetorical style, like Zamahshari, Sakaki, and Abdul Qahir Jurjani. There is in the Quran of miraculous exposition as a whole a pleasant fluency, a superior correctness, a firm mutual solidarity, and compact proportionateness, powerful cooperation between the sentences and parts, and an elevated harmony between the verses and their aims. So the first part of this sentence, which talks about the fluency, a pleasant fluency, and a firm mutual solidarity, I guess even for those who do not know Arabic, it's not that hard to accept this fact when you listen Quran. It's almost like a song. But the rest is mostly about the content of the verses, the ayahs and surahs. So I guess it's easier to make sense of them and study them. And yet, while there are 7 or 8 significant factors that might mar or destroy the harmony, cooperation and mutual support, and the fluency and correctness, they do not mar them. Indeed, they give strength to the fluency, correctness, and proportionateness. Only those causes have exerted an influence to some extent and taken others out of the veil of the order and fluency. So there are some factors, author says, which may, affect negatively the fluency and correctness, and also how the different surahs and ayahs follow each other. And author will give some examples, like each ayah being revealed at different times in different contexts. But despite these factors, author says, you do not see such a negative effect. At certain places, we see, he says, that the fluency is affected, as if it's interrupted. But even this would give a positive contribution to the fluency, or at least to the the meaning that these verses carry. But just as a number of bumps and excretes, I don't know how to pronounce, sorry. Oh, excrescences appear on the tree not to spoil the harmony of the tree. So on the tree trunk, you see some bumps, and they do not spoil the harmony of the tree, but to produce fruit, which will be the means for the tree reaching its adorned perfection and beauty. In just the same way, these factors stick out their knobby heads in order to express meanings which will enhance the Quran's fluent word order. Thus, although the perspicuous Quran was revealed part by part, like stars over 20 years, in response to the circumstances and needs, it possesses such a perfect harmony and displays such a proportionateness that it is as though it was revealed all at once. So we know that Quran was revealed part by part, perfectly matching the circumstances in which it was revealed. And since all these circumstances and the context change over time, that's the life, right? Nothing is constant. Despite it changes over time, we still see this fluency, this coherence in ayahs of Quran. Furthermore, although the circumstances which prompted the Quran's revelation were all different and various, just like I said, its parts are so mutually supportive that it is as though it was revealed in response to only one of them. So as if, you read all these different ayahs, and you will feel that all of these ayahs somehow support the same event. And although the Quran came in response to different and repeated questions, it displays the utmost blending and unity, as though it was the answer to a single question. And although the Quran came to explain the requirements of numerous diverse events, it displays such a perfect order that it is as though it explains a single event. And although the Quran was revealed through divine condescension in styles appropriate to the understanding of innumerable people, it would address whose circumstances were different and diverse. It displays such a fine correspondence and beautiful smoothness of style that it is as though the circumstances were one and the level of understanding the same. It flows as smoothly as water. And although the Quran addresses numerous classes distant from one another, it possesses such an ease of exposition, such an eloquence in its word order, such a clarity in its manner of expression, that it is as though it is addressing a single class. Even each class supposes that it alone is being addressed. And although the Quran was revealed in order to guide and lead to various aims, it possesses such a perfect integrity, such a careful balance, such a fine order, that it is as though the aim was one. Thus, while these are all causes of confusion, thus, while these are all causes of confusion, they have been employed in the Quran's miraculous manner of exposition, in its fluency and proportionateness. For sure, everyone whose heart is without disease, whose mind is sound, whose conscience is not sick, whose taste is unimpaired, sees the Quran's manner of exposition, a beautiful smoothness of style, a graceful harmony, a pleasing proportionateness, a unique eloquence. All the clear-sighted see that the Quran possesses an eye that sees the whole universe, together with its other and inner aspects, clearly before it, as though it was a page, that it turns the page as it wishes and tells the page's meanings as it wishes. Several volumes would be necessary if we were to explain the meaning of this first beam together with examples. So, sufficing with the explanations and proofs of this fact in my Arabic treatise and in Isharat al-Ijaz, and in the 25 words up to here, I have only pointed out here these features of the Quran in it as a whole. Okay, it seems, I guess, perfectly following, just like, the miraculousness of Quran, this specific part of the text, perfectly following what we've been studying so far. Before this part, we've been studying all this, like how Quran is addressing different classes, how Quran is addressing different circumstances, how Quran is addressing different people, how different meaning came out of each ayah. And now we are saying that despite all these diversity, despite all these differences, how they put together, actually, the way it is narrated in Quran, all these different meanings, all these different addresses, all these different contexts, all these different circumstances, comes perfectly together as if Quran is speaking to a single person, as if Quran is speaking to a single circumstances and giving a single meaning, answering a single question. And more miraculous is that this single person, it's me and it's you and it's him and it's her. Whoever is reading Quran, as if Quran addressing this single person in his or her entire life, within every possible circumstances. There is this unity within, or let's say among this within among this diversity. While text is saying that as if Quran is speaking to, like, every person, the text was saying, I guess it was saying class, but let's take it as every person. Every person would think the Quran is speaking to him or her. And we hear, at least from the narrations, that this is true for Prophet as well. Prophet would speak in a manner, in a way, in a style that whomever he is talking to, he or she would think that he or she is the most important person that the Prophet is addressing. The Prophet would give his entire attention complete attention, full attention to this person, speak in a manner that she would understand completely, and would change his style of speaking according to her or his needs. And now authors actually implicitly suggesting that this is something that the Prophet learned from Quran, and maybe through the education that he had in his Miraj, in his the ascension, in his training, a special training that he received in his journey of prophethood. So anyway, I guess the message is clear in the text, but I want to hear, what you think about the text. Which part you found most challenging to accept, or maybe most exciting to hear, or any questions that you have, any comments that you have, so that the text would be, open further to elaborate the topic that we're studying. Abdurrahman, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I guess one part which caught my attention was earlier, where he says, and although the Quran came in response to different and repeated questions, it displays the utmost blending and unity, as though it was an answer to a single question. I find that when I do have questions, and when I am very puzzled about something, and if I, let's say, seek maybe some help from the Quran at that time, more often than not, when I do read the Quran, or I do try to get something from the Quran, let's say reading a translation, trying to get some guidance, I seem to come upon a verse or something where I do find as if, oh, there's an answer to my question here. Maybe it's not an answer I like, or maybe I'm not like fully satisfied with it, but I do see like it's almost addressing my certain problem. Like there are verses, and because of the encompassing nature of the verses and the pre-eternal speech, you can come to the conclusion that these verses have to deal with you. Like they seem to address the questions that you have, almost as if that verse was specifically talking to you, even though in like the context of the all different verses, it might even be talking about something else, but you can come to this conclusion. I mean, just as Nursi is saying here, that it seems as if it was there just to answer a single question. And that caught my attention because I sometimes witness that myself.
Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, that is really important. So what do you think? This is a question that I'm not sure of the answer. That can we also read this part that you just mentioned, that as though it's answering a single question? Can we also read this as despite all these different questions we have in life, which changes from one point to another, right? Our questions changes all the time, especially as they are reflections of our daily living, our daily lives. So questions I have today will change tomorrow. But still, as if there's a single question beyond all these different questions that I'm asking. There's a single answer that I am after. What would you think? Would this be a reductionist approach for a human being, that beyond all these different questions we have, from time to time, we actually seeking for an answer to a single question, something like what would happen to me, or what kind of the future is awaiting for me. Would this be a very minimalistic approach?
I think that interpretation also makes a lot of sense for that sentence. And oddly enough, I think so. Like this idea that there is a single question that I have that the Quran is actually answering, and uh, that's like what the Quran is talking about, which would make sense to me because sometimes I do read verses and I maybe the questions I'm asking are very irrelevant, or they're not like the true purpose that the true questions maybe I should be asking, or they're not what needs to be addressed. And the Quran keeps, if it's answering this one question, or if it's like really just centered around this one question that it's answering, that it would make sense that a specific verse or some verses might not make sense to me, since uh I'm not open to it. I'm not a recipient of what the answer it's giving me. So that would also be something that I can also witness in my own readings.
Jazakallah khairan. Any other thoughts and other questions, comments? I have some questions in my mind, but I prefer listening to yours. Okay, while you're
Could I ask one question?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So in all the, let's say, months that we've been reading this word, it's been difficult to truly understand like some of the things Nursi talks about. You know how he says, oh, it's like has miraculous comprehensiveness, miraculous exposition, and he gives us examples of verses that he apparently thinks are miraculous and have such deep meaning. uh I guess like the question I have is, do you think Nursi is like, you know, when he explains it here, he explains it very matter of fact. He says this is how it is. It is a statement of like fact, reality. And I'm wondering if this is, and when I'm asking the question, it doesn't seem, it kind of sounds dumb, I guess, but do you think like he's speaking from a place of like theory, or because for me it's so hard to be able to actually understand this practically, like the things he's saying, you know, how, for example, it displays such a perfect order that Azo explains. I mean, let me actually try to come up with an example then. Like, although the Quran was revealed through divine condescension, in styles appropriate to understanding of the innumerable people. Uh, anyways, like he talks about how like there's like extreme eloquence in it and extreme clarity in it, and but I'm thinking like there must be difficulties on understanding. He must have had difficulties on understanding. Like I know he speaks in places where he says like, and then the verses were revealed to me. So I'm guessing like previously the verses were not revealed to him. Previously he had difficulty understanding them. Uh like the question I'm trying to, I guess, come up say is he speaks this, he's stating this, but it's not easy to come to these conclusions, and I'm sure he had difficulty coming to these conclusions, and they're not so like clear. Like you can read verses in the Quran and not understand the things that Nursi is saying. You can be like, oh, these are actually very confusing, very puzzling verses, and they don't seem to be clear. But I guess what he's trying to say here, what the conclusion is, that eventually they might be clear. Eventually there'll be like this eloquence in it that you can gain. And also he went through that same path of trying to understand it, and it wasn't just like right away clear to him as well. That's just like a, because when he just says this, it's just like I was like, really, was it really so clear to you like that? And then I'm just like have a question in my mind, and yeah, I just wanted to ask what about that.
So I have some thoughts about that, but I guess it, like again, I would prefer to listen to others first if they have any thoughts. ideas. Mohammed Said, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Well,
Well, really, the things that are that I have in my world um, are all kind of also in question forms, and not specifically addressing any question, but I would like to share and try to at least capture them and share with you. And I think exactly that's the purpose here, that or the this section that we have read mainly reminded me this making human being to capture his thoughts, let's say, when he personally as an individual um, faces the Quran. I think that is a completely different experience. That's what is being highlighted here. That as an individual, it's kind of, I take this section as an invitation that the author is sharing his own experience with the Quran. That as if like, brother, you have to see it, you have to experience this. It's as Abdurrahman was, I think, trying to highlight it, that um, the only thing I can actually conclude about this particular text is that the author is sharing something, but I cannot really uh, understand or experience it unless I myself go and do the same thing as he did, like which is um, facing the Quran as the speech of my maker, and really opening myself to be transformed, whatever the question I have. I think that's one of the main goal, maybe, or main theme here, and I think that's something that is maybe neglected, because when I say like it is a completely different, it must be a completely different experience. I'm thinking like from my own life, there have been I was exposed to the messages of the Quran, but it was always from uh, like a second hand, if you like. I don't know if it is the right word to use it, but some other people experienced something, and then I kind of benefited from their experiences. And it might be through Risale, it might be through some other people, other brothers and sisters, which were all beneficial. But I think here is the point here is to um, you know uh, really be honest with myself, or come to that level and open myself uh, to the speech in the Quran, and see what comes out of it, as if like see what kind of experience is it. uh, that kind of invitation, I feel it is being um, highlighted here. There was this is one point. There was another point I wanted to share. Let me think. Trying to remember. Um, Sorry, I couldn't remember the other point, but yeah.
No worries, we still have time, so you can interrupt whenever you want. So I also had similar thoughts with Mohammed. Like when we read such paragraph, such text, I guess one way to take it as an invitation, as he said, invitation to see this miraculousness in Quran. Author says there's such a fluency, there's such a proportionateness, And please take a dive and experience it, see yourself. And I also agree that without doing this, without doing so, I'm not sure how beneficial it would be, just reading from other people. I guess that's one way. The another way is like going back to Abdurrahman's question, what is the purpose of authors writing such a text? So I guess we can take it again from a historical perspective. We could say the author has studied Quran for a long time, and this is the fruit of these studies, trying to understand and expose the beauty of Quran. So I guess we could take them as conclusions that he reached. I guess another way to take is such a text is to give us a better understanding of Quran, an elaboration on how we should be approaching Quran, what kind of expectations we should have from Quran or any scripture claiming a divinity. A scripture which is for guidance of people, a divine scripture, should have such or similar features that you should be looking for. So for instance, he's talking about the fluency. And we see there's a fluency in our life, right? We don't feel that, from my childhood to today, to this day, and to my maybe grave, at least my expectations, considering my expectation, but as a matter of fact, from my childhood, from my infancy, from my let's say my mother giving birth to me, to this very moment, there is a coherence, there is a fluency in my life, despite everything is changing. It's such a paradox that everything about me is changing, but still there is a constancy, there's a single flow in it. And this scripture is being revealed to such a creature who, with all these changing contexts, all these changing circumstances, within all these changing circumstances, still following a single flow and within a big, unending, uninterrupted coherency. So the scripture itself should have the same feature. It should address all different circumstances I've been through. It should address every different ages that I've been through. Even, these the silly adolescents, me, who thought, knowing everything about the world, still knowing nothing about the world. The Quran should address such a person. Quran should address, or the scripture should address, a slightly, at least relatively speaking, wiser me. Quran should address the baby me, but at the same time have this fluency. So I guess we should also read this text as a necessary condition that such a divine text, such a divine speech should have, and such a miraculousness that I should be looking for. So I guess this is another way to read such a text, but I still think, at least personally, that what Nursi writes here is what he really experienced when he studied the Quran, and he's inviting me as well to experience the same beauty, same miraculousness. And I totally agree with you, Abdurrahman. Like, to me as well, when I read a verse, there's always this perplexity. There's always this ambiguity that I feel like there's something to be opened. It needs to be opened, waiting for me, but it's not easily accessible, at least every time. There are some surface level understandings, like a surface level meanings that I can, easily grasp. But when it comes to a real guidance, as if this ayah that I'm reading asking me first to do something, be in a certain mindset, open, make sure your heart is open to the meanings that I'm going to carry to you, and then I will reveal them. So I can see this happening there, but it's not always readily accessible. All these meanings are not readily accessible, at least in the first moment of reading them. But at the same time, when I read someone like Nursi explaining an ayah and making connections with his own life, with other people's life, I do not feel that it's a far-fetched explanation. I do not feel like being tricked or cheated. It's usually makes great sense. Like my mind, my heart, my soul would say, yeah, this is true. I agree with this. I can accept this. There's peace in this understanding. I'm not sure how much it addresses your questions.
No, thank you. That was helpful.
Any other comments or questions regarding this one, or I can throw one more question? So other day I was reading some stuff on internet, the usual things that we do, just navigating pages aimlessly. So I stumbled upon this saying about these divine scripts, so-called divine scripts, including Quran, from the person's view, of course. That he was arguing the fact that they do not change. The script itself, right? The Quran is the same Quran. It was same 1400 years ago, and it is still same. With other scriptures as well, like although I believe there are some modifications, or even if it's not modifications, that the historical facts suggest that at least some parts of them are compilation from different people. But doesn't matter. After a certain, let's say, moment in time, they haven't been changed at all. But the human society, human civilization is constantly changing. Our understanding of the universe is constantly changing, expanding, he would claim. Our science is getting better and better. Despite all these expansions, despite all these the changes in human condition and human society, civilization, he would say, these so-called scriptures are not changing. An author is suggesting this is kind of a miraculousness, the fact that the same text is addressing all different circumstances. But he would say this, constancy, this not being changed, is an evidence that they are false. A human being, a rational human being, accordingly, would require a guidance or a text or a source of knowledge, just like science, which is constantly changing, adapting to the new circumstances. So when you read this, when you hear this, whatever medium you are interacting with, it sounds reasonable, isn't it? I mean, it does sound reasonable. But here, authors saying that, no, actually, the fact that the same scripture, same ayah, speaking to all these different people lived in at different time points, in different circumstances, is a miraculous exposition, a miraculous fact. So what do you think about that? Like, do you also expect that a guidance, a divine guidance, or any source of knowledge to change constantly, to adapt itself to new circumstances? Just like, science being updated constantly. What do you think about the constancy or a fixed nature of Quran? That it was same 1400 years ago, it's still same today, and it will stay same. That's the definition of a divine scripture. It will still stay same. That's 1,000 years from today. Sohail?
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I mean, to me, just to put it simply, the fact that it doesn't change or that it's applicable in all times and periods and to places is that it sort of speaks to the ignorance of man or his incomplete knowledge, created knowledge, that he can't even encompass what's happening before him, that it requires thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years to ascertain how the universe works, and even now still doesn't understand. So to me, that's not, some people say, oh, that's a sign of progress and human intelligence. I would say it's a sign of human ignorance. It's arrogant, I think, to think that man, because he knows so much more now, that he's far more intelligent than man 1,000 years ago. Because somebody 100 years ago will look upon man today and say, well, he was ignorant of how the world works. So, but you can't really say that about the Quran, because the Quran is talking about very much essentially fundamental matters that are transcend time itself. So that's what I would say. If anything, that looks to its truthfulness, and who the speaker must be.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, it is really important. And when we look the history of enlightenment, or the knowledge accumulation, let's say. It's interesting. We don't see a linear progression. It's always fluctuating, and even like almost like a spiral that people, the scholars, the scientists of that era would claim something, it would be refuted, and then the same thing would be claimed and then refuted, and the same thing would be claimed and then refuted, so on and so forth. Like we see such things in every aspect of science. So definitely there's no linear progression. The most things that we make fun of today about the earlier nations, about their approach to the subject matter of science, it is funny that the way we approach today is almost the same way that the people approach the universe, let's say the people before the previous nation. It's almost like people have a certain understanding towards the universe, and then a new nation comes, ridicule them, and then another nation comes, ridicule the previous one, going back to what is before the previous one, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's one thing. But at the same time, I agree with you. Like looking at what we do, how we act, how we approach the reality, the universe, which is constantly changing, and expecting the same thing will happen with any source of knowledge, any source of guidance, no matter what the source is a huge sign of ignorance and arrogance, actually. It's like, I am designed this way, so everything has to be in the same way. Human cannot grasp reality in its entirety. Hence, I refute the possibility of anything having a grasp of reality better than myself. Everything about me is changing. Hence, whatever I think of, or whatever the source of the universe, has to change just like me. Otherwise, I would simply deny it. I guess there's a huge arrogance here from the beginning. And like when I read such text, author says, at least implicitly, that yes, you are right in expecting. So you have one expectation which is truthful, which is that the guidance should change as I change. If I am in a different circumstance, then the guidance should change accordingly, adapt accordingly. Let's say not adapt, but should be addressing it as well, if it is possible at all. As human societies develop, the guidance which should address them in a proper way, matching their progress. In this expectation, you are right, author is saying, at least to me. But do you know what? When you look at the Quran, somehow it satisfies this expectation of yours. The Quran is fixed, but still, when you read it, it will satisfy you. And then you will change, you will read it, it will again satisfy you. the entire society will change, entire understanding of universe will change, and Quran will continue satisfying you and others. And do you know what author says? This is a big miracle. It's the biggest miraculous aspect of Quran. So yes, you are right in your expectations, but you are arrogant that such a text cannot satisfy this, such a speech, sorry, let's not say text, but such a speech cannot satisfy this expectation or need. That's the arrogance part. You are right in your expectation, the way you are being guided, that you should be guided. But you are wrong when you say that the source of the universe, the source of all this creation, cannot do this. Because it has to be limited as well. It has to be just like me, just like us. I guess this is the arrogant part. So yes, like I guess reading or listening such ideas, it's educating in the sense, you know, what other human beings, regardless of their state of belief, what other human beings are expecting, they're asking for. And to be honest, most of the time, I'm also asking the same stuff. But being open to the possibility that your need can be satisfied is what separates, I guess, someone who believes in a scripture and someone who does not. Mohammed Said, please go ahead.
I was a little bit away for a while. I'm sorry if I am completely kind of diverging from the thoughts being shared at this moment. But I was able to listen to you, at least. What came to my mind is that you also kind of touched upon this point, that my position and the things around me, surrounding me, their position is there. It's not changing. What is the questions that I have, or let's say existential questions? Let's say I feel meaningless. I feel dead end for something that by experiencing something I feel there is no love. I am in need of love. I am in need of meaning, but there's no meaning. What happens when the Quran speaks, uses the same reality, me as me, and the things around me as they are, and then provides the meaning from out of the same reality, that then I realized that it was me who wasn't aware of it. I think I can call this one the question, that my lack of awareness results in questions that are being addressed. That's an interesting thing. Maybe as a human being, I need to be humble at this point, as you are saying, that there's something that I am not aware of, and I need to be trained in this way, or I need to be reminded what is lacking in me. And I think the scripture or the speech of my maker makes the universe speak as it is, in the the same universe, the same me, but the things start speaking to me um, through the message. That's very, I think that's kind of a mystery um, that I think as a human being I am, again and again I am being reminded. And as it was said, there's a continuous, a constant change. And my thoughts, my um, feelings, my conditions being changed too. And yesterday's awareness is yesterday's awareness. It's not the same universe today. So um, by definition I am in need of a guidance for today, for the moment. um, and in that sense I think such a speech from the maker is a must. Otherwise there is I when I look at my own experience, it's really impossible uh, to make to think and to come up with such a reality that the Quran um, um, puts out, or the Quran provides. It's it's very miraculous actually. It's the same me, the same universe, the same sunlight, but it speaks after exposing myself to the Quran. It it becomes a completely different reality, and I find myself in a place that I've it is exactly what I need, what I need to hear. Or I find myself in a place, in a universe that speaks to me in a way that I would like to hear. uh, I think that's the way the maybe generally the Quran um, speaks, or I personally read the Quran. That or that's how I understand the Quran. That uses the same reality, but it reminds me the things that I am completely unaware of. That, for example, um, today uh, I had the opportunity to study a little bit with my sister a verse from Suratul An'am and verse 12. It was a verse saying that the mercy, a part of the verse was saying that mercy is necessitated uh, by the essence, by his essence. So mercy is the necessarily part of his essence. And the part of this verse is like this, but in the beginning uh, calls the reader to question how come uh, this samawat, this uh, skies and the earth uh, are here. How come? And it's a very simple question, but when I really follow the way that it calls me to question, I realize that, oh, it cannot be here by itself. The sunlight cannot provide me the light by itself. The earth cannot provide anything by itself. And then, out of this reality, it says that, are you aware of it, that you are showered with mercy in each moment that I wasn't aware of a moment ago? I was not aware of. It's very miraculous. And so I think that's the whole point I wanted to make.
Jazakallah khairan. So it's then Quran going even beyond our expectations, just making sense of the ambiguity as we see in reality, but also opens up many more meanings in front of us that we've been unaware before, like mercy, for instance, that we fail to see mercy in most things. But the Quran says, everything that being created is a manifestation of a mercy, actually. So there is another thing, we can maybe argue when reading such text, is that yes, author is talking about definitely the fluency, how the different verses and ayah, the surah follow each other, despite being related to different topics, at least when we first look at them. And the coherence and oneness, completeness maybe, of these ayahs, as if they are addressing a single person, as if they are answering a single question. But at the same time, while doing so, author also suggests, implies, and previous texts that we read explicitly say that this verse, the ayah that you would read, would mean different thing depending on who is reading the ayah, in what circumstances, at what time point, where. And there's such an understanding that this dynamic nature of the speech, dynamic nature of the speech of the Creator, it's against a certain understanding of Quran, right? Like some people would argue, for instance, that no, there is only one meaning of this ayah, which is this and that. It was revealed to, address such a circumstances regarding some followers of the Prophet, or it's about the war that they've been through, or it's about, something. There's always a historical context, and the meaning of ayah is restricted with this historical context, they would say. And this is not a minority, actually. This is a big majority, even. So what do you think about, this contrast that the Quran is being restricted with a historical context, each ayah having a single meaning that needs to be studied, and all the scholars before us, they already identified this single meaning, and what we need to do, just read it, try to understanding and accept it. On the other hand, what author suggests is that it's a dynamic text. It's your journey. You should dive into it. You should have your understanding. Of course, there would be some limitations defined by the rationality or defined by the features that you observe in the universe. So it must be, compatible with what you experience. Or it also must be compatible with the absolute nature of the creator, but it's your journey that you should be experiencing it. So the first one sounds simpler, easier to follow. The second one harder, but at the same time, since it's personal, maybe more delightful. But what do you think about this contrast? Even the claim that the Quran is speaking to all different classes of the human beings, it's very, I guess I would say, a marginal thought that we cannot find everywhere. What do you think? Suhail, please go ahead.
I always found it interesting that people will generally say, how can somebody make interpretation when there are people who've already made interpretation? And I think the issue stems from the fact that people don't understand that those people were also making interpretation fundamentally at the end of the day. Like everybody's making interpretation. It doesn't matter who it is. And even the prophet is making an interpretation. He's not absolute. He's understanding it from his perspective also, which is why he never sort of tells people this is what he means. Because if he did, then people would take it as to be the absolute truth. And it, and by doing so, people, it's as if they're restricting the Quran, well, they don't realize it, to a time and a place. So they say, well, X, Y, and Z had this interpretation, so this is it. Well, they existed in a specific time and place. So are you saying the Quran only exists in that specific time and place? And who gave them the authority to interpret over anybody else? So it's a contradiction, and I think it's just an easy way to say that I don't know how to make sense of the Quran, so I will rely on others, which is fine. I mean, not everybody has the ability or the knowledge or have studied enough to do so, but that doesn't make somebody's interpretation the interpretation of the Quran. Some people may have a better interpretation, and that's for everybody to decide for themselves. But it's almost as if it's like storytelling at that point, because it doesn't become about how you personally take what you take away from the Quran. It just becomes about somebody else's idea, somebody else's personal understanding, rather than your personal understanding. And so the Quran just becomes a source of information at that point, and that's what religion becomes, or the Quran becomes, even though it's not really information speaking to me here and now.
Jazakallah khairan. I see. Oh, okay. I thought your mic was open. Oh, I guess that's a very important point, what you said. Like, even if we try to appeal to somebody else's interpretation, a big scholar or not, it would be an interpretation. Like, if we didn't need such interpretations, the Quran is not an encrypted scripture, right? It's just plain Arabic. So all we need to do then would be just learn Arabic and then read it, just like a poem or anthem. We would read it and then articulate it, and that would be all. We wouldn't need any tafsir, for instance, right? The fact that we need tafsir, the fact that the scholars wrote tafsir interpretation, it already shows that the scholars had the need had the desire and the need to come up with an understanding of this text. At the same time, it's, at least to me, it sounds fair to say that, yeah, like it seems like, at least for our age, that the old scholars that everybody, refers to, there's the scholars of, let's say, the golden ages of Islam. They have a special place in the sense that they were very serious in what they did. They took it very serious. They were really respectful scholars and people, unlike myself. So I guess, to me at least, it's really easy to say that what they did, like when I open a tafsir in front of me and try to understand it, I respect it, that it's something, beyond my talents, it's something beyond my sincerity. But at the same time, I feel the responsibility to come up with a understanding which would fit my life, which would address the question of this very individual, myself, living in this time and in this place. This is at least what I think of Quran, that it's asking me to be in a state that looking for answers for my life, for my moments, and then it will speak to me. Okay, it seems we are almost out of time. If you have some final remarks, comments, questions, I would be happily listening them. Otherwise, I guess we can end a few minutes earlier. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.